I know a bit more now than I used to, but at the start I knew zero. But I still wrote music and orchestral music. And I was like, well, but there's no one talking about how to do this without theory. So I'll do it for the sake of people like me who want to learn. Now I know something. I want to be the change that we should see in the world.
Welcome to the Long Game Podcast. My name's George Bafaloukos. In this podcast, we'll be taking a deep dive into the world of game audio. Join us as we explore the careers, challenges, and triumphs of the professionals who craft the sounds that bring our favorite games to life. Today's guest is Alex Moukala. He's a composer for video games and has worked on projects like Rift of the Necrodancer, Contra, Operation Galuga, Stray Gods, and many more. In this episode, we talk about his upbringing in Italy and pursuing a career in music later in life, his YouTube channel, music implementation, breaking into the Japanese game industry, and much more. Let's dig in. All right, and we're back with another episode of The Long Game, and this time we're joined by Alex Moukala. How you doing, Alex?
Hello. I'm doing great, man. So nice to talk to you after our GDC hang. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. Just getting started now. It's a little early here. It's a little late there, so I'm glad we could sync up for this. But yeah, you're the second Memoria guest on. Yeah, I just had
Nice.
Jake on last episode, so it's really cool to catch up with you.
It's, like that project itself, I'm so grateful for it because it introduced me to people like you and Jake. Like both of us, like you were on the Contra game, right? Contra
was.
Operation Galuga,
Yep.
and I was too.
I
On
know.
one track.
That
and
was
then
so
Jake
crazy.
and I, and one time I was working on a project still, I'm working on it now, and they needed a sound designer, and they asked me, and I said, I know someone better. And I asked Jake. So
Oh, that's
Memoria
awesome.
project really gave way to friendships and work relationships that I'm very grateful for.
Absolutely, man. That was like the first real big project that I worked on, and like the relationships that I made during like this and with Jake and plenty of other people I still keep in touch with. I mean, it really was just like an amazing opportunity like so early in my career. So I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah, me too. Actually, it was similar.
But yeah, so I feel like we'll just get right into it. And I usually just start with like an introduction about the guest. So from the very beginning, where are you from? Where'd you go to school? What got you interested in music, video games, anything that kind of helps the listeners get to know you a little bit better.
Sure. I'll try to give you the short version of it. I have a problem where I really can get sidetracked and talk a lot. I don't want that to happen today.
Take your time, man.
But yeah, I am from Milan, Italy. My parents are from Congo, and they moved to Italy before I was born. So I was born there, raised there, and when I was 6 years old, I received my PlayStation 1 as a gift from my dad. And with my brothers, we were, choosing which games to buy. And we all had a thing for mechs. And we saw Final Fantasy VII. And we confused Midgar on the back cover for a mech. And so we bought it, thinking it's a mech game. And then it ended up being one of the most influential games of my life. It was in English. I didn't understand English at the time because was Italian, but still the game captured me and really made me feel like, wow, the world is such an interesting place because in the game there's all the summons and references to like mythologies from all over the world. And I remember Googling what the hell Ifrit and Shiva is and what is Quetzalcoatl and what Ramu and whatever. And I found so much, and the game, the characters, the lore got me so much more interested in the world. And the music of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII, which I played at the same time, made me feel things that I never felt before. And most especially, the whole combination of Final Fantasy made me feel like I belonged, which is a feeling that I didn't have a lot as much as my Italian friends who were being raised in Italy as, white Italian people. I was raised as a black Italian, and I felt like I belonged, but never 100%. But Final Fantasy, somehow, that mix of influences from so many countries made me feel like, oh, the world can be all-inclusive and can be so rich and colorful, and these stories are so amazing, and I don't know, that hit me so deeply, and I became obsessed with it, and that's what made me want to become eventually a game music composer, which is the job I do now. The idea is I'd love to work on games that make people feel like they belong, make people feel more interested in the world, make people fall in love with like philosophy and art and all those things that Final Fantasy so nicely portrays. And that's the the short version. The long version is way more detailed. I started making music at 19 years old, actually,
Wow.
because ever since I was a kid, I had this feeling that unless you are talented at something naturally, you shouldn't try it. Like, if you're not talented, there's no point for you to try it. I don't know why I believed that. I think maybe it was like Italian society that made me believe that. My parents, I don't know what it was, but I had this feeling. But then at 19 years old, I was like, that dream of making music for video games or making music at all kept calling to me. And I basically dropped my day job, which was web developer. I used to program in Java. Dropped my day job, decided to take a year sabbatical to try to learn how to make music. And I bet with myself that if I was able to earn one single euro with the music I made in that year, I would keep going without a side gig or anything. Like, I was really reckless and lucky that my parents allowed me to stay at their house while I was doing this. I remember I earned €7 that year because I sold one single copy of a jazzy song that I made on a website called Audio Jungle, which is royalty-free music, basically. And that day when the song sold one copy for €7, I felt like a millionaire because like the year before I didn't know how to make music, and now that happened. And so I kept doing it. I kept going harder at it. Eventually became a composer for Hollywood movie trailers, which was fun. I learned a lot about music production, made a lot of amazing friends that I'm still friends with to this day. And it allowed me to make a living out of music. And then I stopped doing that because I lost fulfillment in it. Started a YouTube channel where I taught people how to make music, how to write orchestral music. And in the meantime, while I was doing that, I was studying how to write orchestral music. And eventually I found myself studying video game music specifically, started another channel about video game music to teach everything I know about video game music and learn as much as I could. And my attempt was also trying to build an audience that was interested in video game music so that then when I ended up writing music for a game, which was my ultimate goal, I would have an audience that would be appreciative of the music that I wrote, kind of. So that's what ended up happening. It's been like many steps, one after the other. Most people who know me from that video game music channel, and they think I just started from scratch on that channel and that's it. They don't know I've been making music for many years before that, or that I had other YouTube channels before the Alex Moukala music channel. So it's been a very, very weird journey. But throughout that journey, I've met so many other people who illustrated so nicely that no journey is the same. Everybody has a different upbringing. And that kind of dispelled the way I've always felt about myself a bit. I always felt kind of like, again, like I don't belong, like I'm different. Like I don't have this story of like, I played piano when I was 4 and I became a prodigy or something, like my favorite composers do. I started at 19 years old. I still don't know how to play piano very well. But meeting so many people in the industry really taught me that we're all different. And that's what makes us precious, kind of. So that's where I'm at now, I would say. Now I'm writing music for games. Did a bunch of them and looking forward to do a lot more, basically. But that's me.
That's amazing. Yeah, I didn't know that
Yeah.
you started at 19. That is very late for a lot of composers.
Absolutely, yeah.
But something you said, like, I mean, it's very true. That's kind of another thing that I've learned through doing this podcast is nobody's story is the same. How they ended up where they are working in video games, whether it be sound design, composer, any discipline. I mean, really, the journeys are very, very different. So were you...
And sometimes, like... Sorry.
Oh, no problem. I was just wondering if you were self-taught. You didn't go to school for music.
No, but I basically did like a semester on Berkeley online. They had like I think a 6 months course on producing electronic music basics. That's the extent of the, actual education I got. But then I also like invested in myself by paying for private lessons with music producers that I admired and composers that I admired. Bought a whole bunch of like online courses that taught me a lot. Bought books about music production and songwriting, and books even about like just artistry. One of my favorite books is called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, who has an incredible TED Talk about creativity and inspiration. And she's a writer. It has nothing to do with music, but what I'm saying is there's many resources from many different kinds of people that I learned from, some that were paid, some that were not. So in a way, I do feel like I have an education, but it's not like the going to school kind of. That was the first thought that I had. Like when I started, I was like, if I go to an actual school, my parents are going to cut me some slack because they will see that I'm following a path that is sort of institutionalized as opposed to going at it randomly. But then we saw how much it costed. And I figured, okay, if I go to school and I pay this much on a yearly basis for like 5 years, I'll leave this place being in debt. And that will force me to make certain decisions when it comes to like my career starting after school. And I prefer to have a bit of a more free approach. And also I felt bad about asking my parents for that money. So I didn't go. The Berkeley thing is the extent of which I've studied officially. But I've learned a lot there, I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I relate to that a lot. I went to community college for audio engineering, and I took 4 years to do a 2-year degree because my parents were paying for it. So I just took 2 classes a semester, and I just worked a side job at the same time. So, you know, whatever it was, like, I think at the time it was like $1,100 a semester. It's like, okay, like we can afford that. It wasn't like going to break the bank, but then I was able to leave school with no debt. So I definitely understand how that could definitely like inform, like, if you have, you know, $200,000 of student debt, you do have to take whatever job that comes in
but
front
that
of
there
you.
goes with the there goes with the thing I was saying before. Like sometimes really like everybody of us is different, and sometimes even for some people do have the path of like, oh, I went to school and I went there for 5 years, like, or whatever, like 6 7. There's lots of people like that, but even there, like there is a lot of talk of like privilege, of like, oh, you're successful because you were born in a privileged position, and to an extent I think that has an influence for sure on like the sort of things you can get up to do. But I think for some people, not having gone to school could have been like, it might have been a saving grace, because they had to be in a situation where, okay, clearly I have no possibility for like learning things that have been done by other people before me. Maybe I have to reinvent the wheel here and create something new. Like some people just tackled music from that perspective, not only due to their creativity, but sometimes it was just a question of limitations that forced you to go a certain path. But then maybe on that path they found really like they started mixing genres in a way that was so unique and created a new wave of music that was made them famous. Like that can happen. But then another person may have their lives changed by going to school. I know, for example, Dream Theater, the legendary prog rock band, is compromised on members who, for the most part, met at school. So, like, if they didn't go, they wouldn't have formed Dream Theater. So, like, I don't know if there's like a right or wrong answer. We all have our circumstances that we are born in. We all have our plus and minuses, but sometimes the plus turn into minuses and the minuses can turn into pluses. A lot goes down to the way we approach things, and also a fair degree of luck for sure. But what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't think people should feel bad if they went to school, nor should they feel bad if they didn't go. As long as we do what we can with the cards we have, that we do the best we can with what we're dealt, I think we're on the right track.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, yeah, everybody's circumstance is different, and I don't think that it's a necessity, but I do think that I did learn a lot in school. And,
I bet you must have met a lot of incredible people too, right?
Yeah, lots of great teachers. I got a great internship with one of my teachers through that I kind of set up myself. They were probably going to stick me in a recording studio, and I was much more interested in film at the time. So, yeah, I mean, I don't regret going at all. But, like, again, I also learned most of the game stuff that I do self-taught on YouTube, or friends helping me, because they didn't have a video game program. That was only, audio engineering for like studio recording, and then it was also like film sound.
Yeah,
so all of the
that's often a
nonlinear
thing.
stuff was, I'm self-taught, and all the
Yeah,
middleware and Unreal and all of that stuff I learned on my own.
that's amazing, dude. It's not easy stuff, but like the information is out there, and if someone is resourceful and motivated enough to learn, like they can do incredible things like you have done.
Absolutely. The world is your oyster these days, which is fantastic. But yeah, I did want to kind of circle back to Memoria. Like, I guess it kind of touches on your YouTube channel as well, where you started doing these kind of like funky covers of, Final Fantasy music and Persona. And I mean, you really have a unique talent for reimagining established music in your own voice, and you really did that on Memoria Project. And I was just curious, like, how you heard about the project, how you got on, and your approach, or any highlights from working on it.
Well, I was very lucky first that Dan contacted me, like the project lead. I think at the time there weren't even that many members on it, but he, the idea. I think it was him and it was Cam probably, and the idea was there, and I think they found my Final Fantasy stuff on YouTube, and they asked me if I wanted to be part of it. Of course, Final Fantasy is my favorite game of all time, favorite series of all time. So of course I had to say yes. And both him and Cam seemed like amazing people in the industry. And also I was at the time where I was just starting with the video game project. So I thought this is just a win-win-win-win situation. Like, it's one of my favorite games. Get to work with like fellow game devs. This is great. And then I was lucky that the whole team that started forming around the project was so freaking inspiring. Like,
Yeah.
being in the server and seeing all the work in progresses and all the conversations about stuff, even just rigging. I didn't even know what rigging was until I saw the Memoria project. And I was like,
It's a crazy
wow, so
job.
that's how it works. Yeah, it was so incredible. Like, all the art, all the assets, the lighting and stuff. It was seeing a game come together, right? Like a vertical slice, unplayable, but come together was so amazing. And it was so inspiring. I remember like there'd be times during the Memoria project where really some pieces of music I wrote were directly inspired by the team. Especially the ending credits theme, which was like a medley of Crossing Those Seals and the place I'll return to someday and the Victory Fanfare. I basically mixed those three tracks together. That one was basically my dedication to the team for all the inspiration that I got from the project. And I remember when I wrote that track, I was like dying. I was burnt out for many other projects that were converging with this one. But I felt like, no, I have to do it. Like everybody's really pulling their weight above their weight. Everybody's going super hard. I should do it too. And it gave way to a track that the team really liked. And then also the people who watched the project on YouTube, I've seen reactions of people who cried with that track at the end to wrap up, because it wrapped up, the project because it was the credits song. And then I was also lucky that everybody on the team was so passionate about Final Fantasy IX, because there'd be times where I was maybe being a bit too transformational with the music. And there was one theme in particular, like the Alexandria theme, which is Vivi's theme. I made a day and a night version. The day version worked fine. The night version, I did some things that probably were a bit too out there. And people on the team were like, I'm not so sure about this. But it was such a nice environment. By listening to feedback, and I ended up creating something that was, in my mind, superior to the original version that I wrote for the night theme. So there's been times like that. And I've also had a lot of fun with the Memoria project because I wanted to really understand Nobuo Uematsu's process on the original Final Fantasy IX. And while working on Memoria, I really started to observe, or I recalled, just how many more medieval instruments there are in Final Fantasy IX compared to the other Final Fantasies. Like, harpsichords, and there's like recorders, and there's I don't know if there's hurdy-gurdies, but there could be. Like, it's really like loads of like Renaissance instruments he used in there.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing some research, I saw that he went to like, when he was working on it, I think he lived in Hawaii at the time, but he decided to take a trip to like European castles to get in the vibe. And so I was like, I should try to get in the vibe too. So I started using more medieval instruments for that score specifically. And it was a lot of fun. So it was just one of the most rewarding experiences in many ways for me.
Yeah, I agree. I remember the day when you shared that end credit scene with the team. You're just like, hey guys, hold on, I got something for you. And we all just sat on the Discord call and you shared it. And I just remember just sitting back in my chair just going like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, thank you. That was a reflection of the way I felt about the team. I really wanted to dedicate that one to you guys.
We all are very thankful for that. It was a tremendous song. All the music that you made for that was amazing. And I think that the response to it when we did finally release it was very well justified.
Heartwarming.
Yeah,
it was really like to the whole project. Like people lost their minds, and seeing this project come to fruition was the reward in itself. But being part of it was such a surreal experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. All right. Well, yeah, moving on. I do kind of want to touch on the YouTube channel a little bit more. I just checked before we started this call, and I mean, you are almost at like 500,000 subscribers on that. It's amazing. So yeah. I want to know kind of like what possessed you to start making videos in the first place, and then how you kind of grew it to the place where it is now.
So the intent behind this channel is similar to the one behind my first channel. My first channel is the one where I teach people how to make music, like it's music production tutorials, most especially how to write music by ear. And the idea behind that channel is the same as this one, which is I created a YouTube channel that I wish existed, that I could have watched when I knew less about these things. Because again, the theme of like feeling like you don't belong is a constant in my life, kind of. And when I started the tutorial channel, I was like, well, there's lots of people making videos where I teach how to write orchestral music, but very few do so by ear without knowing theory. I don't know much of music theory. I know a bit more now than I used to, but at the start I knew zero. But I still wrote music and orchestral music. And I was like, well, but there's no one talking about how to do this without theory. So I'll do it for the sake of people like me who want to learn. Now I know something. I want to be the change that we should see in the world, kind of. With the video game music channel, it was similar. I felt like there's loads of like game composers, there's loads of game music fans, and there's many people uploading game music on YouTube, and people congregate there and they listen to it. But I feel like game music composers sometimes are not given full credit for how amazing their work is. And oftentimes it's because people don't realize exactly why the music is so good. They tend to associate it with the fact that, the story of the game is good. I love this character, so I love the theme song. And I'm like, yeah, you love it for that, but there's also so many things that are happening subliminally in the music that were put there by the composer to make you feel a certain way. And very few people were talking about it in a way that I found was accessible. There were some channels like 8-Bit Music Theory, which is freaking legendary. It's one of my favorite channels of all time. But if you don't know much about music and you watch his videos, you may not fully understand what he's saying. And so I thought, well, I am used to teaching stuff without explaining theory, basically. I love video game music. I would love to be in a position where I get to talk to people who love game music because, I love to be in the bridge between like game creators and game fans. And I decided to make a channel that kind of tackles that niche of people who want to learn more about video game music but do not understand the musical language, so to speak. And that is why so many of my music reaction and music analysis videos kind of go in depth in music production topics and stuff like that. But I don't often mention like, oh, there's this C13 chord over G doing this modulate. And I will show it with audible examples, for example, as opposed to just talking about the theory. And I'm trying to make music more approachable for people who love it but don't understand it. And that's my attempt to get people to really appreciate how amazing the work of game music composers is. And then also, like, I wanted the channel to be a place where I can also advertise myself as a composer, as a music producer. And ideally, if game directors end up seeing my videos and they're like, oh, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about. He's very good at what he does. Maybe I should hire him. I'll be happy about it. And that happened a bunch of times. And plenty of other things happened thanks to that channel. But I think I owe it all to the fact that this channel specifically was, especially like a few years ago, was really tackling like a need that wasn't being handled by anyone. Now, I think through my channel and many other channels of this kind, people have started to see like, oh, this type of videos get a lot of views, so I'll do it too. And I get it. That's how social media works. But for me, that was never the intent. It was like, I want to connect with specific types of people and I want to solve a specific problem that I see people are not solving right now. Now it's being solved by many, and I'm happy to see that. But at the time, that's what kind of possessed me to begin it.
Right on. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I mean, I feel like that's why it was so successful. And now that you're more successful in video game composition, you're working a lot more and you're busy. Do you find that you have as much time for the channel, or is that something that you want to continue pursuing, or is it going to kind of take a step back?
Not a day goes by that I don't think about my channel and that I don't think about how much I miss posting as consistently there. But yeah, unfortunately, like the game dev stuff, like the game composition, takes so much time out of my day. Most especially because I'm still at this time at this point it's been like 2-3 years that been working making music for games. So I'm getting a bit better now. But before I really had a lot to learn because writing for games is completely different from writing for trailers or writing music just for listening purposes. So I also tackled multiple games at the same time. And you know how games are. Sometimes you start to get on a project, but it doesn't kick in until later or whatever. Like stuff can like become really time consuming later on. I applied on different projects at the same time, expecting, or I was told also that, oh, this will kick in at this time and this at this time, whatever. And then they all flared up together at the same time. It was infernal. So I basically found myself without time to live for a while. And that's why I haven't posted as much. But I'd love to, get back to posting regularly. I think I'll have to like change quite a few things in my approach if I am to get back to being very active on the channel while also having a game composing career. It's definitely possible. Like my friend Austin Wintory does it. His channel is amazing and he posts fairly consistently. And I would recommend it to anyone who loves video game music, most especially game composers or game directors too. But yeah, that's a goal for the future for sure, to like become more active there again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling that that flare up, like you mentioned, as we speak. I'm going through the heavy period right now, so I can't imagine having several projects kind of pop off at the exact same time and being the only one working on it. I mean, I assume you're usually the sole composer on your projects,
Well,
right?
I'm always trying. Yeah, I am, but I'm always trying to like add people. Like, hey, can we add this composer friend of mine? I'm gonna basically like team members and people that then help me on like, okay, you track the guitars or you write, the second half of the song. Or I always try to, where I can, add people to the project because on one side I love to, help my friends and composers I admire get a place in the industry and get noticed and have their chances to bloom, so to speak. And on the other side, I think the music also like becomes like the music improves if you have multiple people on board on a soundtrack. That's kind of what we did on the Contra Operation Galuga soundtrack with the remixed tracks. Like they had different composers for each, right? And that allowed each and every one of us to like give our 200% to the tracks we were working on. Of course, even if you do like a full soundtrack by yourself, you're gonna give 200% whatever you can. But I really feel like when you're able to focus on specific tracks and you're able to delegate tracks of specific kinds of people who specialize in those types of music, you end up getting a better result. In my opinion, that's why soundtracks like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Remake are so iconic and so incredible and full of bangers, because there's so many composers on those soundtracks, and that's something I didn't understand at first. I remember when I played Remake first, I didn't make music for games yet, and I saw this extensive list of composers, and I was like, why do they have so many composers? There was a time where Nobuo Uematsu would just write everything, or Masashi Hamauzu would just do everything and whatever. But then, I look back and I'm like, oh, in Final Fantasy X, the soundtrack was dealt by three composers: Nobuo Uematsu, Masashi Hamauzu, and Junya Nakano. And so many of my favorite tracks are from Junya Nakano and Hamauzu. Obviously, I love the Uematsu tracks as well, but I started to notice like how much a game has to earn from featuring different voices in the soundtrack, both in terms of productivity, in terms of style. And FS7 Remake is the ultimate example of that. Same for Rebirth. If they let a single person handle those, like, that amount of tracks in that game or those games, one, I don't think they would have survived it. Two, the soundtrack would have totally suffered. So when I work with people, I'm always trying to like open them up to the idea of hiring more composers rather than just one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the ideal thing is when you have one person who fully understands the music language of the project, and helps like shape the sound kinda, and then that person can help and guide the other composer. So I love to have that role as sort of like a music director of sorts. I've done it a few times, and it's been great. It's been really good. That's kind of my way of dealing with the stuff flaring up altogether. What about you? What do you do when you have stuff like blowing up altogether and now you're like surrounded with insane deadlines?
Well, luckily it's three of us on the audio team, so it's not just me. But typically at Way Forward, we have a couple projects kind of in development at the same time. So right now I've been kind of heading up one, while the other two sound designers, my coworkers, Tommy and Ian, are on another one. And it really just boils down to that one of the games is made in Unreal and one is made in Unity, and I have the most Unreal experience, so I kind of took the lead on that one, and then they're working on the other one. But we're getting to the point now where it's probably going to be like all hands on deck. Everybody needs to come over to help me to meet this deadline. So, we kind of just pivot, we kind of just like allocate our resources as best we can. So thankfully it's not just me.
That's a good way to go. Yeah. Like, it's I think with games, some people really have this idea that, oh, just one person can do everything, because I think the reasons are multiple. One of them is we grew up with games in the 90s and early 2000s, and it was different then. Like, the amount of content was different. So, like, of course, maybe one person could do all the job. The definition of even just sound, right? The amount of sounds you have in a game now compared to before. Like, did we have like round robins for footsteps of characters in the 90s? Like, no. But now, if you don't use those, it's gonna sound really like weird, right? Because if you don't have that level of definition in the sound, then you cannot make the rest of the game look worse. If the graphics is insane but the sound is rudimentary, then there's that disconnect in people's brains, who they will feel it subconsciously. They won't be able to tell what it is. But you, as a sound designer, know like every step this person takes sounds exactly the same. There's a problem. So with music, it's the same. There's so much now, so much detail that can be added, that, yeah, having a team is definitely a good idea. But then it also depends on the project and what the project looks or sounds like. But,
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many variables. I guess that kind of does lead me into my next question. So you recently worked on Rift of the Necrodancer, which is a very awesome indie game. It's a sequel, right?
Yeah. It's a spin-off.
Okay.
But it features characters from the Necrodancer, and it has a new story and stuff. I don't know where it takes place, like, chronologically, if it's a sequel or not. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Because I haven't played the original. So, like, I just listened to a lot of music from the original.
Right.
I haven't played it.
But I wanted to ask you, like, for that game, seeing as it's kind of like a sort of like a Guitar Hero, like, spin-off, like the player performs the songs. I wonder how did that affect how you composed the music for that project?
Well, one of the inspirations for this game, like a small inspiration, was Rhythm Heaven, which is one of my favorite games. It's a rhythm game on Nintendo DS. Also, I played Guitar Hero, and I'm a Beat Saber addict, and I love music that has an engaging rhythm to it. I love music that has iconic melodies and all this stuff, and those are all things that the Rift team wanted and asked me. And I remember when we started working together, they basically said, "Oh, we have different, like a varied team of composers. Each of them are tackling a specific genre of music. For you, we really like the idea of like, so synth wavy stuff and inspired by Bloodborne. I'm like, say no more. Like those are literally two of the things I love a lot. And so yeah, we just aligned perfectly, I would think. But the way I approach the music is to really write something that compels the listener to listen to the entire piece. I didn't want the tracks to have boring moments. I wanted them to be varied enough that the beat map could be, interesting and could challenge you. So there's portions of tracks where I'm doing some really crazy syncopation to like really allow the team to then build a crazy beat map, and then players find that challenging. There's one song where I did that exactly at the end, so you can go through the entire song and be like, oh, I got this, and then the end passage is infernal and you die all the time. So it's like the Dark Souls of music. But yeah, it's been great, and I had a good time fusing influences from musicians that people wouldn't, like people who love the Necrodancer series maybe don't know. So the first influence, of course, was the Necrodancer soundtrack. I went there directly, but there's a music producer by the name of the Bloody Beetroots, which is an Italian electronic music producer who makes insanely heavy stuff, gothic, but like stuff that you would only know if you go clubbing. And I don't do this, but if you do drugs. I don't do that. I just love this music. But if you're the type of person who just loves to get wasted, drunk, and do drugs, the Bloody Beatles could be the soundtrack of your life. I'm like, maybe the average Rift fan wouldn't like that. Like, wouldn't know this sort of music. So that's the perfect sort of influence to add in here because it's going to add something fresh. And then there's some influences by, Julian Casablancas from The Strokes and Muse and all this, stuff and Pokemon and Persona and all fused together. And yeah, and Bloodborne, of course. And that kind of gave way to some of the tracks that I wrote for the game. There's one track in particular I wrote with a friend of mine called Aram Zero, and I always have this fun joke with him that of all the tracks I've wrote, there's two that are very popular. One is the one with Aram Zero, and another one is the track I wrote alone. And I'm constantly watching the number of streams because I'm waiting for the day that my track that I wrote alone will dethrone the track I wrote with my friend Aram Zero. But that freaking track keeps staying up. People love it because he did some crazy things on his guitar. But yeah, the law of Rift for me has been like rhythm and melody first and interesting passages. But yeah, for every game I end up scoring, I tend to have a different approach because I always love when games have soundtracks that feel like they were written exactly for this game and wouldn't work in other soundtracks. So that was my idea with Rift and many other stuff that I wrote for. But yeah.
Right on. Yeah, that makes total sense. I feel like it does have to rely heavily on the rhythm. It's a rhythm game yeah. But yeah, I'm curious. Go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to say one thing. I gotta give the team credit because one, they've been one of the best teams I've ever worked on, maybe the best, because they did give me those pointers like, hey, synthwave, Bloodborne, whatever, read them. But then they said, we trust you, do whatever you want.
That's always nice.
And they said that to the entire team, and then the result was like so insane. Like some tracks just mix influences in ways that I could have never predicted, and they have been extremely nice to me, like in ways that I can't describe. But I really, let's just say they set the bar high for the other developers that I ended up working with in the future, and it's been great.
Well, You love to hear that. I mean,
yeah,
that's fantastic. Shout out to the Rift team. But yeah, so I guess that kind of leads me into like a more technical question. Mm-hmm. How often on the projects that you're working on are you implementing your own music, or how often are you throwing sounds over the fence? What's the ratio there?
Like sounds as in sound design?
Or your music, forgive me.
Oh, wait, what do you mean throw over the fence? Sorry, I'm not an English speaker.
Oh, like
throwing stuff away?
No.
Or sending tracks to them?
Sending tracks to them, or how often are you like in the engine implementing your music personally?
Right, sorry, this is my non-English speaking brain.
But no worries.
Yeah, it's different for every project. On some projects, I will do the implementation because like sometimes I work with game developers who don't have a lot of experience with music implementation, for example. So they don't know the extent of what they can get, even just from meta sounds. For example, there's a project where I didn't know anything about meta sounds, but I did programming, as I said before, my only job. And so I kind of think sometimes like a programmer, and I really observe and listen and notice when in video games like there's interesting implementation techniques, I always find it very interesting. And so on a game I was working on, I basically told them, hey, maybe we could try to do this specific thing. I cannot explain what it is because NDA, but I basically gave them an idea of we could implement music in this way and it would create this effect, which is like a metaphor for this lore bit in the game, and it can define the soundtrack and change everything for players. This is gonna be fucking awesome. And they're like, wow, we can do that. And I said, yeah. And then I had to figure out how to do it in meta sounds. And I did. I spent some time doing that, and then I showed them. I like to figure stuff out to understand like how far we can take the music, and then tell my clients and be like, hey, this is a possibility. Let me show you how. Do you want to do this for the rest of the game? And in some projects, I end up doing the implementation myself, or I create like a meta sound example and then send it to programmers, and then they implement stuff like that based on the example. Other projects like Rift, I didn't implement anything. I just sent the tracks. They did it themselves. But I love doing that because, like, really, when you're working with a team who doesn't fully understand what they can get from an implementation, from musical implementation, then you can be the one who kind of brings that change. And yeah, I usually do that out of my own volition because I know it's gonna make the music better. It's not a requirement, but when I feel like there's no discussion about implementation, I always want to start the discussion myself because I really feel like it's one of the next, not even next frontier, because implementation of music and adaptive scoring has been a thing for so long. But I feel like people still don't fully utilize it. There's so much more we can do than what we're doing now in most games, and so I always like to start a conversation with people. As for how often I send tracks, like it really depends on the project. Like, yeah, it varies wildly depending on what the project needs. As I said, stuff flares up and flares down at crazy regular levels, and there are situations where they're like, oh, you have a month to finish the soundtrack and you need to do like 15 tracks or whatever. I'm like, okay, I will die, but fine. And then there's other periods where I'm like, oh, they just need one track this month and one next month or whatever. Like it's wildly different.
Yeah, I guess that just kind of goes along with being a freelancer, the kind of ebb and flow of
Exactly.
work.
Exactly. So for me, it mostly depends on like how much stuff I'm working on in parallel. Usually, that makes things get hectic.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay, that answers my question. That's really cool that you're digging into meta sounds. I've recently had to do the
Dude,
same
it's
myself.
so fascinating, right? There's some. I mean, obviously, there's. Have you looked at Wise and Fmod?
Yeah, no, we used Wise at my old studio. Used Fmod for quite a few games at Way Forward, and then right now we're doing a game that's Unreal Native. So I had to learn meta sounds, and I had to build a music system, and I had to do all kinds of stuff with it. And it's been really, there's a steep learning curve on meta sounds, but once you kind of wrap your head around it, it's really, really powerful.
Yeah, like it. I guess your imagination is the limit there, kind of, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't tried to use Fmod or Wise yet, but I know that they are technically way easier to use compared
I think
to
for
meta sounds.
if you now that you know meta sounds, going to especially Fmod for music implementation, you would have a heyday. Like you
Yeah,
would love it because the transition markers in Fmod are so cool for dynamic music. Like the
yeah.
possibilities are endless, and accomplishing that same thing in meta sounds, while not impossible, it's gonna take quite a bit of doing.
That's what I've observed. Like you really gotta think like a programmer to a crazy degree, and I love it for that reason. But I can imagine like if I didn't have my previous background as a programmer, I wouldn't be as fond of it. Meta sounds.
Exactly. But yeah, no, that's super cool. And I think this question might take a little bit of explanation, so I wanted to give us some time to really flesh it out because we were talking about this at GDC. We were just sitting talking. We met up and got some coffee with Dan from Blizzard, and we were just walking around the gardens, and we started talking about kind of the game industry in Japan and how different it is, kind of the culture of it, and how difficult it is to be a foreigner and work on Japanese games. So I'm really curious, kind of your thoughts on that, because I think if anybody could do it, it's you. Like, you're so embedded in that world. You were doing interviews with the Final Fantasy composer, like panel interviews on the Game Awards and things like that. So I want to know like your thoughts about it being more exposed.
I should preface that I haven't worked on a Japanese game like yet with a Japanese company, but I have friends who do, and I've been in touch with like people from Japan, as you said, from within the industry. And I think actually I have heard stories, especially recently, about the fact that Japanese companies are really looking forward to, like, I feel like Japanese companies are opening up a lot more to hiring foreigners, because I think there's this understanding in Japan that a foreigner's perspective can really add a lot to a project artistically. At the same time, I love Japan because they also are like, their games don't try to like necessarily like appeal to everybody at the same time. They still will respect their Japanese traditions. But I think like the difficulty probably it would be in the mentality switch, probably, because like I feel like in Japan they are definitely more team based, more group minded, less individualistic. While in the West, we tend to be more like egomaniacal, like, oh, me all the time or whatever. So it's just like the culture shift required probably could be like the one barrier. And then, of course, like the language barrier. But crossed those two barriers, I think, you technically should be good. But I haven't done that experience, but I really think it's a paradigm shift. If one person really decides to move to, Japan or, China or Korea to get involved in the gaming or music industries over there, I think they need to brace for the fact that, well, there are completely different societies and the way they operate is different from here. And if one person is ready to like embrace that and adapt to the way people think and work there, then that's awesome. But if one person is not open to that, then yeah, it's tricky. And yeah, I haven't had that experience yet. So I personally don't have like a lot of thoughts on it, but I do love the work they do over there incredibly. And
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, I often wonder like, oh, if I moved there, how would it be for me? I don't know if I could still be a freelancer. Like if I moved to Japan, I probably would have to like work at a studio and become an in-house composer and get sponsored and stuff like that. Like it's a lot of like bureaucracy, etc. And then I get the feeling, I'm not sure now, I'm literally talking out of my ass right now, but I get the feeling that yeah, you would have to build a reputation, you'd have to like get to meet a lot of people and stuff like that. I really feel like Japan is about people and groups of people and stuff like that. So I can imagine maybe getting hired as someone who doesn't know anyone there may be harder than here, but at the same time I know people who got hired exactly like that to
Right.
go work at a Japanese company. So I'm like, I don't know what I don't know. But I do know it could be a struggle for some and it could be great for others. Like it all depends what you want, and most especially if you love the way people are over there, like it's a great idea to go. But my girlfriend is a Korean teacher, and she tells me often about how some people fall in love with Korea because of K dramas and stuff, and then they go there and they notice that Korea is not like in the K dramas, and they're shocked. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of it's kind of like watching anime and thinking Japan is exactly like that. It's not.
Right.
It's completely. That's there's some things, but like Japan is so much more than what you see in anime, right? So you gotta, if you're open to embracing a different culture, then you're in the right path. But if you're not, then yeah.
Oh, for sure. And I hadn't even really thought about that till you mentioned it, but yeah, I guess that is like a pretty primary difference with Japanese games is they typically do have in-house composers, and that's almost unheard of.
Yeah. There are many freelance composers, but usually they start in-house. They work on projects that are kind of meaningful and stuff, and then they go freelance because usually it's because I assume they want to make their careers bloom and flourish even faster without necessarily depending on the success of one company. But yeah, I suppose it's a bit more rare to just come out of it, be like, hey, I'm a freelance composer. I don't have experience on previous careers, previous companies, but hire me, and then people hire you. I don't know if that happens as easily as here.
Well, and it's even difficult here. I mean,
Yeah.
like you kind of do have to have some sort of in with the company or with somebody that works there. I feel like even just applying, if there is an application for sound design, like, I mean, just the sheer amount of people that apply and that they're sifting through. I mean, like, I do feel like the networking is extremely crucial here.
I think that's where you gotta play to your strengths. I think because even just networking is a word that makes me always feel like
I know, me too.
kind of yucky because and it shouldn't or rather I don't know, but there's some people who are completely fine with it, and there's people who are like me. I'm like, I don't know why it makes me feel kind of weird, but I have a friend who moved to Japan seemingly out of nowhere. He is an opera singer, and he ended up really developing such an amazing career for himself in games and in anime and in films. He's also an actor. He's done advertisements, and his strategy was really like standing out, which is kind of the opposite from what people tell you, right? I just said before, like, oh, but fit in the society, understand how they think. He did that, but he also was like, well, I'm a tall Italian man, already I stand out because it's just such a different, sort of like physicality compared to like the average Japanese person. And he went hard on that. He really worked on becoming a very distinguished member of Japanese society in a way, in the way he appears, the stuff he does, his work, etc., and that propelled him like nothing else. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, yeah, it is different. It's difficult everywhere. It's different everywhere, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses and our ways of being. And that friend of mine in particular really has no problem standing out. Another person may see his path and be like, oh, I would feel so bad because I don't want to draw attention to myself or whatever. But he's like, I love it. All the world is a stage, whatever. So it's like, it's good to figure out what type of person you are and then going for things with a specific strategy that works for you in the context that you're trying to operate in. And as for me, like, I'm good. I feel good about the way I'm doing things right now. Maybe one day I'll move to Japan. I don't know, but yeah, we'll see. Would you ever would you be interested in doing that yourself ever?
I've never been to Japan, so I'd have to go visit first before I even considered it. But yeah, I mean, like, I live in Arizona. Like, I'm not really in a game hub at all. I have a lot of family here. I kind of got some deep roots. It'd be hard for me to move outside of the country for sure.
I have that with Europe. I love Europe too much. Dude, I've been to Japan 3 times. I can't wait to go back there, to be honest.
I definitely want to go visit. I want to eat the food more than anything, and I want to go to their card shops. I'm a huge Pokemon collector, so I want to just go and see it.
Oh, you're going to love it. You will love it. That's one of the few places in the world where I really felt very comfortable and very at home, like Japan. And I haven't even been that much around. I've mostly been in Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and Nara. I really want to see other parts of it, but every time I go, I'm like, people are really nice. They're really peaceful, and yeah.
But God, we got to get you on a Final Fantasy game somehow, my friend.
Dude, that'd be amazing. That's like the ultimate dream. Again, that would be the ultimate dream because like one of the reasons behind my journey with making music is this idea, again, being the change I wish to see in the world. Well, when I started, I didn't know of a single like non-Japanese kid who became a composer and ended up writing music for a game like Final Fantasy. Now there are some foreigners who have done that and have done an amazing job. One is called Justin Frieden, I think, who's been on Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trail, I believe. And there's, I think, other foreigners who take part in composition for Final Fantasy. But when I started, I was like, well, if I'm ever in a position where I get to write music for this game, considering that I started at 19 years old without music theory, without all these things, and that would be such a crazy story. And that's the kind of story that could inspire generations to embrace their dreams as well, the way I did it. Inspired by Zack Fair from Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII. So like a big motivation behind the dream of working for a Final Fantasy game is also the idea of having that story being such a positive influence to all the people who follow me and the people who may hear about me after I pass or something. And also, I love Final Fantasy to death. I think it's one of the games with the best music ever. Still is, like, no matter, like, they have so many composers and they all go super hard. So I'm like, if I'm ever in a situation where I get to work on that game, I know I'll do 300% of my best in ways that I didn't even know I could do. So that'll be amazing. But I have to be extremely grateful to Square Enix already because like they have been very kind to me. There's been a couple Final Fantasy events where the Final Fantasy 14 composer, Masayoshi Soken, asked me to go on stage with him to play.
Yeah, I remember watching that.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a Final Fantasy 16 launch event, and then the other time was with my friend Husky by the Geek at a Final Fantasy 14 concert. We were on stage with the band for one song, and it was great. It was a day after my birthday, and it was one of the best days of my life. So I'm like, Final Fantasy has given me so much. It had given me so much even before that happened, but after that happened, I'm like, I still can't believe that actually happened, but it did. So in a way, I really feel like a part of the dream per se has happened, and it's been absurd and beautiful and inspiring, and it's been great to see also people being inspired by the journey that I had so far, and I definitely owe it to Final Fantasy. But yeah, if Square asked me one day to like, hey, make some music, I'd be like, hell yeah, of course I'll do it. I'll drop everything.
Hell yeah, dude.
What about you? Do you have dream projects that you like to do?
I don't know. It kind of like oscillates. Like I think my favorite video game of all time is Fallout New Vegas. I would love to work on a game
Mm,
like that, like just a crazy open world RPG. Like there's just so much opportunity
yeah.
for like really fun, like immersive sound design. I also really love God of War.
Hmm.
I've been playing God of War since I
Yeah.
was probably 10 years old on the PS2.
Which we shouldn't have done, but it was the
It
same for
was a
me.
little too
That
soon, especially the very
it was too
beginning of the
soon, but
first game. I was just like,
oh
boobs.
yeah,
But
yeah, I remember
yeah,
that.
no, I mean, I love the God of War games. I think that would be
I mean,
amazing.
for you as a Greek, your personal Greek origins, it must have hit even
Oh yeah,
harder.
totally. And plus, I was always
Yeah,
just interested in mythology, and I just think like the stories are so
dude,
cool.
me too.
So yeah, I mean, that would be probably those
Yeah.
two, and then maybe just like a real FPS, like I don't know, like a Halo or a Destiny or something like that, where you
Mm.
can really just go crazy.
So you like the idea of like really shaping a world
Yeah,
with sound, like having a vast world and you get to like bring life to it. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
absolutely. I mean, just like hundreds of weapons to design and all make sound unique. Like several different like biomes and like really cool ambience to attack. Like that's the kind of stuff that gets me excited, you know?
Dude, what was like your favorite project that you can talk about, or favorite sound you designed for a project that you can talk about?
Hmm, that's difficult. I'm not really sure.
I I saw, so Jake, we were talking about him before, right? I I see the stuff that he's working on for the game that I got him on, and in the game there's some spells, and there's like an ice spell that shoots like multiple projectiles. Dude, like I saw the spell before Jake put his hands on it. I saw the animation, but then I saw it with the sound, and my mind was so blown because he did things that when I heard them I was like, oh, of course that's what it sounds like, but before I heard it I couldn't have thought of it. And sometimes I wonder like if how much fun he's having with that, if he's like, oh yeah, that's just another Tuesday or whatever, or if he's like, yo, this is sick, because I was like, this is fucking incredible what he's
That's
done.
awesome. Yeah, I
uh
literally had him on last week. So I'm still
yeah.
finishing up his edit. But yeah, I got 2 episodes ahead of you. But I'm probably
Hmm.
just gonna release these, every couple weeks. I'm thinking because that gives me enough
Hmm.
time to edit and not spend, rip my hair out trying to like make this happen after work and stuff. But shout out Jake, that's awesome. Can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your stories eventually about your sounds, man.
Well, eventually. I'll have to think about that. Geez, if anybody ever asked me that again, I don't know what my favorite sound is.
I saw this video with the sound designer from Santa Monica Studios who was working on some sounds for God of War Ragnarok. I think she was doing Foley, and in the video she showed her process, and it was absolutely mind blowing. Like I think that video has like millions of views because people suddenly were like, "Oh my god, this is so cool! We never got to see what it looks like," and now like that, yeah, the way she thinks about sound and the way she takes one sound and converts it into another. Like, oh, this sound of Atreus holding the bow comes from this other thing that you never would have thought about. I'm like, what? How? How does that work? It's really fascinating. It's like, when people think of a composer, they're like, how does a composer know what instrument to use for which melody? And if you're a composer, you're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But if you're not, it's fascinating to think that someone knows so much about the physics of music and sound. So anyway, yeah, this seems like a very cool job, is what I'm trying to say. Sound design.
I really like it. I definitely can't complain. Can't see myself doing anything else. So yeah, man, I'm really happy that I get to pay the bills making cool sounds for video games. Well, hell yeah, dude. Well, yeah, I mean, that puts us at about an hour. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, it was fun.
Interesting story, very unique, and I think the listeners are gonna get a lot out of this one for sure, especially the composers that listen to this. So yeah, thank you very much, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I had a good time talking with you, and I have a last message to give to the composer and most especially game directors who end up listening to this. For the composers, what can I say? Like the music implementation is really freaking cool. It's really cool. So I would advise everybody of you to like look into it. because people sometimes think like, oh yeah, I've read the music first and I'll figure out how to implement it. But no, like if you actually know and understand music implementation, that leads you to compose music differently, and it can really like unlock your creative juices and give you ideas and create a lot of excitement for your project. And for game directors, please trust your composers more. Have you played Clair Obscur Expedition 33?
I haven't yet, but it looks amazing.
Okay, that soundtrack, the game is incredible. The soundtrack is very likely going to win every award this year. And one of the reasons for it is that the director blindly trusted the composer. He really gave, all the information necessary, but he gave a lot of freedom, a lot of belief. And I really, from first-hand experience and from witnessing stuff like this, I've observed many times that composers often do their best job when they feel like they have trust from the directors, freedom to explore, and when they're not being micromanaged. So my advice for music directors, if you want your composers to do your best, trust them. So many games that end up winning game award or whatever, or games that end up having songs that are viral, oftentimes those songs are viral because it was the one song where the composer went crazy and the director just trusted him. Like this happened in so many games. You hear these stories all the time, and I would love to see directors doing them more. I understand like feedback is important if a composer is doing something that goes against the rules of the game, but I think composers deserve more trust than they're given sometimes. So that's my message to game directors who listen to this. But yeah, George, it's been great. I really enjoyed this, and I hope people will find it valuable. And yeah, I can't wait to hear about the stuff that you end up creating in the future, and hope things you're working on now end up going super well.
Likewise, man. Thank you very much, and wish you all the best on your upcoming projects. I can't wait to see what you're up to next.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, let's call it there. All right, thanks, guys.
Yeah. Cheers.